Imagine America in the early 1930s, a land of uncertainty, long breadlines, and deep despair. The Great Depression was one of the darkest chapters in American history, affecting every facet of life and leaving an indelible mark on the nation. But how exactly did this period reshape America and lay the foundation for modern society? In this video, we'll explore how the Great Depression not only altered the lives of millions, but also reshaped American politics, economics, culture, and identity. It all began with the stock market crash on October 29, 1929, famously known as Black Tuesday. In the roaring 1920s, stocks soared to unprecedented highs, leading many Americans, banks, businesses, and individuals alike, to invest heavily in the stock market, often with borrowed money. But this speculative bubble couldn't last forever. When it burst, panic spread like wildfire, wiping out around 40% of the stock market's value within days. This crash erased billions of dollars of wealth, and for many, life savings disappeared overnight. By the end of 1929, America was already on the brink of financial collapse. Banks across the country began to fail, as they had lent out vast sums of money for stock investments that had now lost their value. The result? Mass withdrawals, or bank runs, left banks without enough cash to support their customers, leading to more failures and deeper panic. With the collapse of the banking system came a wave of bankruptcies, and businesses of all sizes were forced to shut down. Unemployment shot up, reaching an astonishing 25% by 1933. This meant that nearly 15 million Americans, or 1/4 of the workforce, were out of a job. Families were left struggling to survive, and poverty became a harsh reality for millions. Bread lines and soup kitchens sprang up in cities, often sponsored by charities and churches, but they were rarely enough to meet the needs of the starving population. Entire communities felt the weight of the economic collapse, with parents unable to provide for their families, and children forced to drop out of school to help make ends meet. Those lucky enough to find work often had to settle for part-time hours and severely reduced pay. As if the economic collapse wasn't enough, the rural areas faced an additional crisis: the Dust Bowl. Severe droughts and poor agricultural practices turned once fertile farmlands into barren dust storms across the Great Plains. Thousands of farmers, unable to grow crops or make a living, were forced to abandon their homes and migrate west, often to California, in search of work. Known as Okies, these migrant families traveled in search of stability, yet they faced discrimination, difficult living conditions, and meager wages. The Dust Bowl further highlighted the country's need for agricultural reform and underscored the deep vulnerabilities in America's farming economy. The devastation of both urban and rural populations created a nationwide sense of despair that demanded radical change. In response to the crisis, President Franklin D. Roosevelt took office in 1933 and immediately launched the New Deal, a series of sweeping reforms designed to stabilize the economy, provide jobs, and restore hope. Roosevelt famously declared, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself," instilling confidence in Americans and giving them hope during this challenging period. One of the first New Deal programs was the Civilian Conservation Corps, or CCC, which employed young men in conservation projects, such as planting trees, building parks, and maintaining trails. The Works Progress Administration, or WPA, was another major program, employing millions of people in public works projects like roads, bridges, schools, and hospitals. These programs didn't just offer jobs, they created infrastructure that would benefit the nation for decades. To prevent future banking crises, Roosevelt enacted several banking reforms, including the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated commercial and investment banking. Most importantly, the creation of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, provided insurance for bank deposits, restoring public trust in banks. Americans could now deposit their money without fear of losing everything if a bank failed. This was a pivotal change in the relationship between Americans and their financial institutions, one that endures today. The New Deal also sought to address the housing crisis. With high unemployment and low incomes, many families couldn't afford homes, leading to widespread homelessness. The Federal Housing Administration, or FHA, was established to offer government-backed mortgages and affordable loan terms. This program made it easier for average Americans to buy homes, sparking a new era of homeownership. The FHA's initiatives not only provided shelter, but transformed the American dream, making homeownership a central aspiration for millions of Americans. The Great Depression was also a turning point for workers' rights. The National Labor Relations Act, or Wagner Act, protected workers' right to unionize and engage in collective bargaining. This was a landmark change, as it empowered workers to negotiate better wages, hours, and working conditions. The Fair Labor Standards Act followed, setting a minimum wage, establishing a 40-hour work week, and placing restrictions on child labor. These reforms improved conditions for millions of workers and set labor standards that continue to protect American workers to this day. Roosevelt's New Deal fundamentally changed American politics by increasing the role of the federal government in everyday life. Prior to the Depression, the government had taken a largely hands-off approach to the economy. But Roosevelt's programs created a precedent for federal involvement in issues like unemployment, housing, and labor rights, which established the foundation of modern American liberalism. The New Deal sparked a shift in political attitudes, leading to the Democratic Party's growing association with social welfare programs and the idea of government as a tool for economic stability and social progress. The cultural impact of the Great Depression also shaped American identity. Art, music, and literature from this period reflected both the pain of hardship and the hope for a better future. John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath painted a raw picture of migrant families affected by the Dust Bowl, while folk songs by Woody Guthrie captured the spirit of resilience. These stories resonated with Americans, emphasizing unity, perseverance, and the importance of community. Many of the policies created during the Great Depression continue to influence modern America. Programs like Social Security, the FDIC, and labor protections are all rooted in the reforms of the 1930s. The Great Depression taught invaluable lessons about the dangers of unregulated markets, the importance of a social safety net, and the resilience of the American spirit. These lessons continue to inform responses to economic crises today, like the Great Recession of 2008. The Great Depression was a time of immense hardship, but it also shaped America's identity and built the foundation of modern society. From the lasting New Deal programs to the resilience ingrained in American culture, this era left an indelible mark on the nation. The Great Depression was more than an economic disaster. It was a transformative period that ultimately strengthened the American people and government, leaving a legacy that endures to this day. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what other historical events you'd like to see covered next.